Hello, Eagles Nation. Vincent Foast here, and welcome to a preseason Game 2 review Eagles chat, where even though the Eagles didn't win this past preseason game, there's still a lot to talk about. Lots of player movement on both sides of the ball. Some positives, some negatives, but there's definitely something I can tell you. We have one heck of an Eagles chat in store for you coming up in just a matter of moments. But before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe to the Eagles Chat YouTube channel, as well as following us on Instagram at Chat Eagles, where you can find daily updates on your birds. You can also find our Instagram in the description of this Eagles chat video. But we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to get right into it, and we're going to first start off with the defense, and specifically the cornerback section. Now, like I said at the beginning of this Eagles chat, there was a lot of player movement, and with the cornerback situation, yeah, you ain't lying. And first looking at, well, who did the Eagles start off with in the positions? And yes, the Eagles started off with Adoree Jackson in the right cornerback position and Kelly Ringo in the left cornerback position. So they kind of swapped the two, as last week Jackson was in the left cornerback position, Ringo was in the right cornerback position. Now, to start off, Adoree Jackson got some good reps, and he got tested a couple of times. And Adoree Jackson made some good open field tackles. Other times he did get burned a little bit. And as for Kelly Ringo, well, he didn't get tested much at the beginning of the game. So, well, what did they do? Well, the Eagles brought in Jakorian Bennett, the guy that was just brought in from the Las Vegas Raiders. And, well, he came in, did not get a chance to play during last week's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. And they brought Bennett in and put Bennett into the right cornerback position and put Adoree Jackson into the left cornerback position. And I got to tell you what, yes, Bennett is our first guy that we have up here on the main board. And yes, he was sticking to his guys like glue. He had a couple of good pass deflections as well, knocking some passes down. So Jakorian Bennett really doing his job, was all over the field and was really putting up, let's just say, some good challenge from a Cleveland Browns team that on the first drive, they pretty much walked down the field. And you know, Vic Fangio was not liking that one bit. You saw Nick Sirianni as well on the sidelines, if you were watching, was kind of writing some information down on what he's seen and some of the blown coverage. And then later in the game, well, yes, there was some more player movement. They were moving around guys like crazy, and they decided to bring Ringo back in, but they put him at the left cornerback position, and Bennett was still at the right cornerback position. But unfortunately for Kelly Ringo, he got burnt a couple more times, which was not giving any more confidence to Eagles fans in his future with the Birds, as Ringo went from being a possible guy that they could use in the future last season to starting off this season and being a guy that, let's just say, a lot of people are really questioning on how he got to be on a professional football team. But I can tell you one thing, Ringo did. He got burnt again, and they started using Bennett in certain situations, trying to maneuver him on both sides, see what he can necessarily do. And I got to tell you what, again, Bennett performed very, very well. And then later in the game, well, they put Mac Williams came in for the Eagles, and they had Bennett and Williams both on the right and left cornerback position. So we're testing a lot of guys there as well. But yes, the cornerback position still up for grabs. And with the Eagles, well, with most teams at this time of year, usually that race tends to get smaller. But with the Eagles, it seems to be going the other direction. With most teams, by now, they kind of have it kind of swindled down to a certain two guys or so. With the Eagles, it seems to be getting bigger. With now you have guys like Mac Williams being tested out. Ringo's still there. Adoree Jackson's still there. Bennett was brought in. With Bennett, the way he's been playing, looking like he's got a good chance to get the position. But yes, lots of going on with that position, but especially, if you didn't watch the game, Jakorian Bennett had a great outing today, was really sticking to his guys. One incredible game by Bennett, that I can definitely tell you. But the next guy we have up here was the kid that was just picked up in this year's draft, and that is Andrew Mukuba, who was all over the place today, was really using his speed. It took him a little bit to get warmed up, as he was kind of burnt once, but after that one time, he really locked in and had a beautiful 75-yard pick six to get the Eagles on the board and actually to give them the lead, as the Eagles led the game for a little while, 7-6. So yes, Mukuba came out with a big-time play again, 75-yard pick six. And then shortly after that, well, Mukuba got another turnover for the Birds and recovered a fumble. So this kid was all over the place today, really using his speed and being able to say, hey, I can stick with my guys too. I may be young, but I'm definitely going to prove myself, and I'm going to earn a roster spot soon on this Eagles team. If not in this next month or so, it will definitely be soon. That I can tell you. But here is a quote from Mukuba himself, and he said after the game, "That was my first ever pick six. Now that I know what it feels like, well, that's a feeling I want to have again. There's going to be a lot more." And hey, if that doesn't give you confidence and make you feel like you want to run through a brick wall for this team, I don't know what does. I'm glad to see the kid having that great confidence. And as well as he played today, hey, he definitely has the right to say it. One incredible game by the kid. Can't wait to see more. Hopefully we do see more of him coming up in the next preseason game next week. But moving on to our next slide here in the defense. And yes, we have, oh, look at that. It's Jihaad Campbell again. And yes, Jihaad Campbell, with the time that he was playing out there, he wasn't playing as much as he did last week, but he was able to, once again, good pressure. Now, originally at the beginning of the game, Jihaad was on the edge position. Here we go again, right? The Eagles use him on the edge sometimes. And then other times this game, well, he went back into his linebacker position. As last week he was playing inside linebacker. Well, this week, well, they kind of did and used him for what exactly they brought him in here for, and that is to use him in certain positions, as he is a guy that can move around back there in the defense. But Jihaad Campbell also had a sack today, was getting good pressure, and that sack did come on a blitz as well. So he was able to get to his guy. And of course, when he was moved back again to the linebacker position, well, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. was on the other side with him in the linebacker position. So yes, again, as expected, they're moving around Campbell, trying to see where he fits best. And I don't even know if it's a question of where he fits best, but more of, how he plays certain positions. And say there's a certain point in the game where they may want to use Campbell on the edge, they can do so. I mean, he definitely showed his ability to play both of those positions and play them extremely well and be able to adjust to both of those positions on the fly as well. That is key, and I know that is exactly what Vic Fangio is looking for in Jihaad Campbell. And again, is absolutely why the Eagles had him pretty much on their target for the past NFL draft. So that is definitely something that I have to bring up in a big way. But another guy that has to be talked about is right here, Ojulari, who also had a great game. And he was on, again, you're looking at your defensive end position now. Joshua Uche as well, and of course, Azeez Ojulari started at the linebacker position. And Ojulari, a couple of times, once they moved him back to the edge, he got caught a little bit, a couple of times. He got caught not holding the edge properly on some reverse plays that the Cleveland Browns did. Now, don't let that negative take away how he performed the whole entire game. Yes, he had some negatives. There were some times where he was not holding the edge properly, not reading the Cleveland Browns play properly. Now, yes, there were some mistakes, but there were also some times where he did hold the edge very well and force the Browns QB to step up in current situations, and a lot of times to step up right into Eagles pressure, where the Eagles defensive line wasn't necessarily getting a lot of pressure, and they didn't necessarily get a lot of pressure last week either. But there were some times where, again, don't let that negative that I mentioned at the beginning fool you. Ojulari still had a good performance and was still proving himself now and then. And yeah, he also got a sack as well. So this is another guy that the Eagles are looking to really develop again. And, you want that constant edge. You want that good power on the edge as well, just to help out that defensive line. Of course, yes, he was playing with a lot of backups today, but this is another guy that the Eagles down the line really hope to develop. And again, there were his negatives, but there also were his positives, and he made up for a lot of those negatives as well. So definitely good to see him really kind of have a comeback and not let his game go completely down the toilet. He did make it back with some good plays and went from not holding the edge too well, misreading plays, to actually holding the edge quite well and being able to, let's just say, get some tackles and get some good pressure up there on the board for himself. But moving on now to the QB play. So yes, did Tanner McKee play today? Well, no, he didn't. I think last week's performance kind of proved that, yes, I don't think there's any challenge. McKee is for sure locked up that QB2 position. He is your backup quarterback. No question about it. Now, of course, knowing me, I still would have liked to see him play at least a couple of reps today just to keep that consistency going. Now, if you've watched Eagles chat for a while, you know how I kind of feel with the Eagles not playing some of their starters. That's a different thing with how the Eagles start slow every single season. Yeah, I could rant on that. Let's just say I'll save that for another time. But still would have liked to see McKee at least have maybe 1 or 2 reps today to make sure that the consistency is still there. But the Eagles said, hey, he played well enough. We're going to give the other 2 guys a good chance. And yes, who did we see today? Well, the only other 2 QBs that the Eagles have, and that is first Kyle McCord and right here Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So the first start off with Kyle McCord. Well, didn't have too bad of an outing. Now, of course, you see these stats. It wasn't a heavy offensive game. In fact, it was kind of boring if you were watching that game for offense. It was a very defense-heavy type of game where the defenses on both sides were kind of coming out with the bigger performances. But let's stay on topic. Let's go over McCord's stats here. And he was 8 out of 16 for 47 yards. And yes, did throw 1 touchdown. And for Dorian Thompson-Robinson over here, well, he went 5 for 8 and had 17 yards, and of course he had 1 interception. So yes, it was a little bit of a sloppy game on the offensive side in general, but hey, Kyle McCord looked like the smoothest guy. Now again, it's kind of hard to judge quarterbacks, and especially a guy like Kyle McCord who's coming in as a rookie. It's really hard to judge these guys when they're working with a lot of third string linemen. So this is the kind of situation where you kind of come into a little bit of a cookie. But overall, Kyle McCord, I mean, hey, 8 out of 16, 47 yards. He was able to get a touchdown to Ainias Smith. So, I mean, there were still some positives there. But overall, a lot of people said this game kind of finalized their decision where Kyle McCord should be the third QB and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Well, a lot of people are saying, yeah, I think it's time for him to take a hike out of Philadelphia down at 95. But again, when looking at this, I'm sure you'll see these 2 guys again next week. You probably won't see McKee again. I would like to see McKee again for maybe 1 or 2 reps, but a lot of people are thinking that Kyle McCord is going to be your QB number 3. I mean, I think so as well. This kid has a lot to prove. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was kind of a guy that was just brought in to if things went south quickly. But I as well think Kyle McCord's going to be your QB3. So we'll just have to see how things play out. But overall, the throws he did get into a little bit of a rhythm during this game, which was nice to see as well. So we'll see what happens and we'll see how that unfolds. Definitely next week's preseason game is going to be one to watch if you want to see these 2 guys again. That is for sure. But moving on to the rest of the offense, as we look to get in a little bit deeper. And for the receivers, well, yeah, like I said, it wasn't a heavy offensive type game. And that kind of showed it, where the only receiver we have up here is Ainias Smith. And let's go over what he has. 2 receptions for 19 yards. He had, like I said, the 1 touchdown that McCord threw. And again, Ainias Smith was showing off his route running skills again. There were some cross routes once again that he ran well last week. Well, he did it again during this week, and we got to see him run some really good routes as well, get open when necessary, and he was using his speed again. And we didn't really see a lot of Johnny Wilson, who was dressed, but they didn't play him. So this is something where, is that a good sign for Johnny Wilson? They already have enough confidence in him to say, okay, yeah, you're set, you made the team. Or were they just trying to probably see more out of guys like Ainias Smith and other receivers that also could have been? But yeah, we didn't see anything from Johnny Wilson. So could that mean he's moving up the ranks? I have a feeling it does, and it could mean that. So we'll just have to see how things unfold coming up in the 3rd preseason game against the New York Jets. We'll have to see how kind of things get into, I guess you could say, how they kind of straighten up as we move forward. And will we see more of Ainias Smith? Will we see more of Johnny Wilson? That's the big question. Well, we'll just have to wait and see what next week brings. But moving on to the O-line. So I definitely have to talk about the O-line where, again, when I said at the beginning of this Eagles chat, there was a lot of player movement. Well, yes, I meant that for the cornerback position, but definitely for the O-line, there was a lot of movement. And let's get right into it as, yes, movement. And with the Eagles starting offensive line against the Browns, well, they had left tackle Kendall Lamb, left guard Brett Tooth. They had center Drew Kendall, and right guard Darian Kennard, and right tackle Matt Pryor. So that was what the starting offensive line was originally for the Cleveland Browns. But did it stay that way? Well, no, it absolutely did not. They were moving guys all over the place. And let's first start off. You had left tackle Myles Hinton came out. You had left guard Drew Kendall. So Kendall went from the center position to the left guard position. really trying to see what they can get out of guys and see if they can change positions and be consistent on the fly. Your center then was Brett Tooth. Your right guard was Trevor Keegan, and your right tackle was Cameron Williams. So as the game went on, these guys, they kind of switched them up. And last week, yes, Drew Kendall was your center. Brett Tooth was over in the left guard position. So the Eagles are really, again, trying to figure out what they can do with these backup linemen, trying to see how these guys can perform in certain key situations. And overall, there were some good plays. There were some not good plays. There were some times where in defense of Dorian Thompson-Robertson, there were some times where he really didn't have a lot of thinking time to prepare back there, as he had guys right on his doorstep immediately when he snapped the ball. And there also was a time where on that interception that Dorian Thompson-Robertson had, the ball was snapped a little bit high by Brett Tooth. Of course, it was manageable, but it wasn't in the breadbasket where the QB usually wants it to be in. And there were also some troubles by Drew Kendall as he had some missed blocked opportunities in the left guard position. But hey, Eagles are switching these guys up. They're trying to see what they can do in certain situations and see if they can hold that same consistency. If they have to, whatever, switch positions on the fly. I mean, again, Landon Dickerson this week, he got hurt. So this is a certain situation where in the season, if one of these starters gets hurt, are these backups going to be able to come in and play consistent and help the Eagles to victories? And if they have to switch a position, well, can they handle that pressure? That's the big question, and that is exactly what has been happening and what the Eagles are trying to figure out during preseason games like this. But to move off the offense and get into the injury update, yes, to end out the Eagles chat with the injury update, we don't really have any big-time injuries. There were some guys that went off now and then, Jacorian Bennett being one of those guys who went off. Looked like he was injured, but then luckily was able to come back on the field, even though, especially knowing his injury history. So that was definitely a relief, as Bennett was probably the best cornerback today. So that was something that, let's just say, a lot of people held their breath for a little bit, but glad to see he was okay. But a guy that unfortunately did not come back on the field was A.J. Woods, as he was said to be injured. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. Again, not a player that is necessarily, up top there, a guy that, is as big as Jacorian Bennett is, but still a guy that we want to keep watch of just in general. So make sure to follow us on Instagram. We'll try our best to keep you updated with all that comes out about this current situation and this current injury to A.J. Woods. But that is going to do it for this preseason Game 2 review, Eagles chat. And yes, coming up, the third and final preseason game. No, it won't be at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles travel up the New Jersey Turnpike to, not New York, yes, North Jersey, because the New York teams don't play in Jersey. Of course, where would you play in New York City? I don't think you'd play anywhere. They only have baseball fields there and hockey arenas and basketball venues. So, yeah, that's it. But Eagles playing the New York Jets, of course, Friday, August 22nd. That will be a night game, 7:30 p.m. So we'll see how the Eagles finish off this preseason. What guys will be used? I'm sure you'll see these two QBs, McCord and Robinson again, as long with some other guys that they look to kind of maneuver around. I'm sure you'll see Bennett again as well. And who knows? Will Campbell make another sighting? Will they be switching him around again? We'll have to see. We'll have to see what the offensive line brings, what the defensive line brings. But this is our last chance to see some of these backups in action, and the last chance for the Eagles to see who they can rely on in a key situation, in an emergency situation, if they have to. But that's going to be all for us. And as always, go Birds! Have a good rest of your week, everybody. Enjoy summer while you still have it, as Eagles football is just around the corner, and September 4th against the Cowboys, it will be here before you know it, where that Super Bowl banner will be raised to the rafters of Lincoln Financial Field. Have a good one, folks.